There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people. And I think the time has come for us to consider, in the light of our experiences in this stay at home, whether the methods which we have applied so far are adequate.
South Africa becomes a republic. It's inaugurated by Mr. Swart, the first president.
In humble submission to Almighty God, we declare that we are conscious of our responsibility towards God and man. We are convinced of the necessity to stand united, to safeguard the integrity and freedom of our country, to secure the maintenance of law and order, to further the contentment and spiritual and material welfare of all in our midst.
Easy words, but there's much that's wrong with South Africa. You wouldn't know it by walking through the well-kept seaside streets of a city like Durban. But beneath this well-manicured, prosperous surface, there are a people deeply conscious of the Republic's problems and how she will face them. Are you pleased now that South Africa is a republic?
We'll just have to wait and see what transpires. I do believe that we have got a very good, rich country with all our sunshine. Also very spacious. There should be place for everybody to live in peace. If only we trust one another and live in unity, I do believe that it can be a very good thing.
Are you pleased now that South Africa is a republic?
Yes, I am.
Are there any political changes which you would like to see?
No, not really. I think our government is quite stable.
You agree with its policies?
Yes, all the way. I agree with their policies all the way. They're fair, they're hard, but they're fair.
At the moment, all I can say is that I'm non-committal. I adopt a wait-and-see attitude. I believe that the future of the country will still go ahead, whatever happens.
Are there any political changes which you would like to see?
The only change I would like to see here is a closer cooperation between the white races and a kinder attitude towards the blacks.
It's the government's fear of what they've called the black menace that dominates their policies, and kindness isn't born out of fear. Strict laws keep Africans in their place, separate lavatories and segregated park benches. It's a world created for the whites and kept that way by the leaders of the Nationalist Party, men like Philip Tolaga. Mr. Tolaga, how do you see the future of the Republic?
I see that we, all the people of South Africa, will get the opportunity of developing one love, one loyalty to South Africa and South Africa alone.
Do you think that Dr. Verwoerd's racial policies are likely to retard the economy of South Africa?
No, sir, it won't, because all investors overseas will have more faith in South Africa, because we will be able to prove to the world that South Africa is the only place in Africa which will be able to remain in the hands of the white man, and the rule will be in the hand of the white man. Therefore, investors will get faith in South Africa.
From Durban, it's 450 miles to the business center of the Republic, Johannesburg. It's a rich country, but last year South Africa lost £115 million worth of foreign capital, withdrawn by investors worried about her political policies. The stock exchange is the center of Johannesburg. It's the barometer of the Republic's economy. The loss of foreign confidence in South Africa was for a time reflected in stock market prices, which slumped sharply. I talked to the president of the stock exchange, Mr. Arthur Taylor. Mr. Taylor, how has the stock market been behaving over here since the declaration of the Republic?
It's rather too early to say yet. But just prior to the Republic, confidence was restored, as there had been quite a lot of buying.
Now, where does this confidence come from?
Chiefly locally. I think there had been a great deal of money that was building up, and they waited to see whether there was going to be any trouble, local troubles, from the Bantu. When this didn't take place, then the local buyers came in, and the buying has been of a substantial nature. This is a country of very, very great potential. We have gold, we have diamonds, we have the cheapest coal in the world, and we have a very cheap labor force.
A very cheap labor force. In the gold mines near Johannesburg, an unskilled African worker earns 10 shillings a day. Industry's labor force is cheap because of the government's policy, the policy of apartheid. But it's a way of life which makes many people uneasy. People like Mrs. Helen Sutsman, a progressive member of Parliament.
I think the actual implementation of apartheid upsets people because South Africans don't like to see people being treated in this way. But I think the basic principle of segregation is probably subscribed to by most of the people in this country, although a growing number of people are, I'm happy to say, beginning to have their doubts. I would say that, generally speaking, most South Africans are worried about handing over South Africa politically to non-whites. They're worried about what has happened on the rest of the continent of Africa. And of course, every time anything extreme happens in one of the other areas or territories in Africa, the immediate feeling is that South Africa must retain political control in the hands of the whites.
Do you feel quite happy about the future of South Africa?
At this present time, I'm very despondent at the moment. I don't see any bright future for us, although ultimately I'm sure the situation must improve, because I believe that people must realize that they simply cannot go on denying responsibility to people who have become evolved and have adapted themselves to all the requirements of Western civilization.
The right of native political representation, the right to work where you want to, the right to move where you want to. Simple things, but no African has them, as you'll hear from liberals like Julius Lewin.
Europeans are certainly suffering from the loss of civil liberties, as well as Africans. You see, freedom is an indivisible thing, and many of our laws say any person who. They don't say any African who. So certainly Europeans have felt the impact of these laws too, but not to the same extent, say, in freedom of movement as Africans have.
Mr. Lewin, there's been a great deal of talk about the loss of civil liberties in South Africa, but is this really a serious problem?
Yes, indeed it is. Perhaps the most serious problem facing us today. Our civil liberties have been narrowed so drastically that I'm not sure that they can be said to exist at all.
Well, what kinds of laws are being applied for you to be able to say this?
Laws that severely restrict freedom of speech, the right to hold meetings, the right of editors to print what they want to print and want to say, the right of movement between one province and one city and another. It's quite a formidable list if you made it full. These laws are there and they are applied. Sometimes they're not applied and sometimes we find loopholes in them. I suppose that we critics might be said to live in the loopholes that they are still in the laws.
Do you feel that these civil liberties might return, might be re-established again?
Oh, I don't say that, no. But I say that in the long run, the awakening political consciousness of more and more Africans will be bound to make itself felt in one way or another. And if constitutional channels continue to remain closed, then I'm afraid African nationalism might make itself felt in rather unpleasant ways.
Up to now, African nationalism has only made itself felt in campaigns of non-cooperation. Where there have been riots in locations like these, they've generally been caused by bad conditions. 2 days before South Africa became a republic, a stay-away strike was organized throughout the country in protest. But most Africans went to work. 10,000 of them were arrested before the strike began. The army was fully mobilized, and an African knows he can be jailed for 3 years if he dares to strike. I went to see the man who organized this stay-away, a 42-year-old African lawyer, Nelson Mandela, the most dynamic leader in South Africa today. The police were hunting for him at the time, but African nationalists had arranged for me to meet him at his hideout. He is still underground. This is Mandela's first television interview. I asked him what it was that the African really wanted.
The Africans want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence.
Do you see Africans being able to develop in this country without the European being pushed out?
We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races in this country.
Are there many educated Africans in South Africa?
Yes. We have a large number of Africans who are educated and who are taking part in the political struggles of the African people. The question of education has nothing to do with the question of the vote. On numerous occasions, it has been proved in history that people can enjoy the vote even if they have no education. Of course, we desire education, and we think it's a good thing. But you don't have to have education in order to know that you want certain fundamental rights, you have got aspirations, you have got claims. It has nothing to do with education whatsoever.
Are you planning any more campaigns of non-cooperation?
Yes. The Pietermaritzburg resolution makes provision for a campaign of non-cooperation with the government, and we are presently studying plans to implement this aspect of the resolution.
Now, if Dr. Verwoerd's government doesn't give you the kind of concessions that you want sometime soon, is there any likelihood of violence?
There are many people who feel that the reaction of the government to our stay at home, ordering a general mobilization, arming the white community, arresting 10,000s of Africans, the show of force throughout the country, notwithstanding our clear declaration that this campaign is being run on peaceful and non-violent lines, close the chapter as far as our methods of political struggle are concerned. There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people. And I think the time has come for us to consider, in the light of our experiences in this stay at home, whether the methods which we have applied so far are adequate.
In February last year, there was a riot here in Cato Manor. 9 policemen were killed. This is where the urbanized African lives. Every day when he goes to work in the white man's town, he feels more and more that he too has a right to a share in some of the good things of life. When the time comes for African nationalism to force the white man's hand, the drive will come from townships like this one. South Africa will change. The money that she needs will flow back into her veins because finance is attracted by the kind of potential growth that exists in this republic. Even if there is apartheid, it's likely to be forgotten quite soon by the foreign investor who wants a good return. South Africa will change politically too, but she will not necessarily be changed by the white progressives or by the liberals, but rather by the tide of African nationalism which has already made itself so strongly felt in other parts of this continent. It will take time because the African in South Africa is not yet organized in any political sense. But whatever the most pessimistic critics may forecast, it will be the voices of people like Mandela which will have the final say in the future of this republic, perhaps even within the next 7 or 8 years.
Africa.